It was just this morning that Tristan's parents informed him that he was adopted. Mr. and Mrs. Boyd, his foster parents, feared how telling him earlier would have impacted his childhood. But now that he was almost 17, they believed he would reciprocate to the information likewise. They handed him a box and told him inside were the few possessions of his biological family, who had passed away in an accident at the time of his birth. He was the only survivor of the family. Tristan returned to his room. He opened the box to find a few pieces of jewelry, some dolls and toys, and one specific item that caught his attention the most, a worn-out wallet. Tristan took it out, assuming it was his father's. He decided to keep it with him. He packed up the box again and slid it under his bed. That night at dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Boyd were awfully stressed. They waited for Tristan to open up and say something. "What happened, Mom? Dad, why are you looking at me like that?" "We know it must be a lot for you to take in all of a sudden." "I know, but it's alright. I'm grateful to have gotten parents like you. Thank you." "Well, you don't have to thank us, son. You've provided us with infinite happiness we couldn't have gotten elsewhere." Mr. and Mrs. Boyd were relieved seeing Tristan handling the information with maturity. That was what they had hoped for. But the very next morning, they were worried sick when they found Tristan suddenly developed a high fever and was in bed. Mrs. Boyd stayed by Tristan's side the whole day, tending to his needs, bringing him soup, applying cold presses to his burning forehead every few hours. 103, that's strange. A sudden fever this high? Looks like it will linger a few days before it wears off. Tristan was feeling horrible. He had no other symptoms apart from the high fever. Mrs. Boyd was highly concerned. "Mom, don't worry. Maybe it's because I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm sure if I get to sleep tonight, I'll be better." That evening, Tristan turned off the lights and tried to go to sleep early. However, it wasn't before midnight that he finally got to close his eyes. Tristan woke up sweating profusely. He searched for the glass of water on his nightstand when suddenly, his trembling weak hands spilt it over, shattering it on the floor. It was seconds before both his parents rushed to his room, rubbing their eyes. Mrs. Boyd sat beside him and checked his fever. "What happened, Tristan? Are you okay?" "Just a strange dream. I'm fine, Dad." Tristan didn't pay heed to these strange dreams of his. This wasn't the first time he had seen this. He had this exact dream many times before, but he could never understand it. What made tonight's experience so strange was that, for the first time, it seemed clear to him. He could see clearly what he had been pointing at. The next night, Tristan woke up to the same strange dreams again. "Mom, Dad, I don't know why I've been seeing these unusual dreams. I see myself standing in the middle of nowhere. I can't really make out what's around me, but I keep pointing at a sign. Every time I've dreamt this, I've seen the same address. 83rd Avenue, Elks Drive, Devil's Lake, North Dakota." Mrs. Boyd immediately stood up in shock. Her face turned pale as she started to tremble. "No, this can't be." She turned to her husband in rage. "I told you not to tell him." Mr. Boyd furrowed his brows. "Hold your patience, Amy. I didn't tell Tristan anything." "What are you guys talking about?" "First you tell us, son. Have you been trying to find out about your family? About your real parents?" "No, Dad. Why? I've just kept the things aside. What happened to them?" "Then how could you know that exact address?" "What are you two talking about? What is at that address?" Mrs. Boyd interrupted. It's nothing you need to know right now, Tristan. You should rest. No, Mom. What are you hiding from me? Amy, I think it's better we tell him. No, Richard. He doesn't need to know. What has happened has happened. He's my son now. I raised him, not anyone else. Amy, you can't hide it from him forever. He deserves to know. Mrs. Boyd got up and headed to the door. Then you tell him. I can't bear to hear this again. Mr. Boyd sat by his son and held his hand. Tristan, the family you belong to had a rather eccentric past. I'll tell you how we found you, but I need you to promise me that you'll not get involved in this in any way. Why don't you tell me first, Dad? What is it? Why is Mom overreacting like this? Mr. Boyd sighed and began. The caretakers at the orphanage were very fond of you. They said you were a miracle child. You had a strong soul, for even after all that you suffered, you survived. It happened nearly 17 years ago, when bypassers from the Devil's Lake Cemetery were walking down Elks Drive on 83rd Avenue, that they discovered 4 graves that had recently been dug out. The last of the graves had not been covered over with dirt. The bypassers were horrified to find the lifeless body of Edwin Howard. It seemed that he had dug his own grave and taken his own life in it. He held a gun in one hand and a book in the other. The police were immediately called, and the other 3 graves were exhumed. The authorities were thundered to find the remains of the other 3 graves were none other than the family members of Edwin Howard, his wife and his young daughter who had passed away, presumably from being buried alive. But his newborn son had survived the ill fate. He was still faintly breathing. That child was you, Tristan. You were taken to the hospital and kept under urgent care, until you were taken to the orphanage where we adopted you when you were 1 year old. You're saying that my real father tried to take our lives? I mean, he did. I wasn't supposed to survive. Why would he do something like this? Whatever his reason may have been, you have a reason to cherish your life. It was a gift from above. It is as if you started a second life. It was a tragic and horrifying event, but what has happened in the past has happened. Let's move on to a better future, Tristan. Mr. Boyd stroked through Tristan's hair once again. We can talk about this tomorrow. How about you try to rest now? He turned off the lights and let Tristan be. Mrs. Boyd was frantically pacing in her room when Mr. Boyd walked in. You told him? Try to understand, Amy. I had to. Did you want him searching for it on his own? After a thorough investigation had been performed on Edwin Howard and his family, police took a look at the book with which his remains had been found. It seemed to contain much insight as to why Edwin Howard had done what he did. On the cover was labeled Book of the Dead, and inside was a supposed treaty that expressed his willingness to sacrifice himself and his entire family to the underworld. Their souls had been sold and their fates had been sealed, and in return, Edwin Howard hoped to attain power of the dark forces in the afterlife. Mr. and Mrs. Boyd were horrified to know anyone could be influenced in such a way that he would take his family's life for it. They were grateful to have gotten Tristan as their son, and they wanted to protect him from his tragic past. Tristan closed his eyes and pondered on his past, his real family. This was unbelievable. He took out the worn-out wallet and held it in his hand. It was as if, ever since he had gotten this, these dreams became more clear to him. Perhaps it really was his father's, and now his. He couldn't remember the pain he must have went through. But now, all these years, these dreams, all these visions or premonitions suddenly made sense now. Tristan wanted to forget his past and live his present. What are you waiting for, son? Come to us. We're suffering without you. No, you did something wicked. I'm not part of this. Come to me, son. Relieve us from this misery. Mom? Tristan, you cannot deny the blood that runs between you and I. Return to us. It is to us you belong. Free us from this bond. Brother, come to us. Take me away from here. I'm tired of playing with the fire. My hands have become cold. No, never. Leave me alone. You aren't my father or my mother. I have nothing to do with you. You don't have a choice, my son. The treaty cannot be fulfilled without you. We have fought against destiny for long. We will remain in dread till you come to free us. Come to me, my son. We're waiting for you. No. Tristan woke up anxious. What had he just seen? Could this be real? Was this a message from his father? Is it true that blood is thicker than water? But only the fools will believe love is thicker than blood. It was only recently that his foster parents had disclosed to him the fact that he was adopted. And it was since then that these unsettling nightmares began to haunt him. Tristan had been seeing these strange dreams for as long as he could remember, but he had never actually pondered upon them till now. It seemed that those very nightmares had been connected to his past all along, and Tristan was eager to know its deeper meaning. However, his foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Boyd, were reluctant and rather wanted their son to forget whatever happened, as all other members of his biological family had passed away in a devastating event many years ago, Tristan being the only miraculous survivor. They wanted their son to move on to a better future, but when Tristan began questioning them, his curiosity increasing with each passing day, they decided it was time to let Tristan know the whole truth. Son, we don't want to lose you. We've raised you as our own, and we think of you as our own, even if we may not share the same blood. Mom, Dad, you don't have to worry. You're my parents. You two are who I call family. And I'll never let anything change that. Amy, the time has come. Remember Professor Connery had told us about this day. Yes, you're right, Richard. Just give me a moment. I'll go get it. Mrs. Boyd got up and went to her room. It was moments later that she returned with a parcel in her hands. Tristan, Professor Henry Connery had told us you would have questions about your past as you grow up. He was the man who found you when you were a baby and made arrangements for you at the orphanage. He looked after you for the time you were staying there while he searched for a family to adopt you. That was when he came to us. We were family friends. So he must know about my biological family, what happened to them. Perhaps he does. In fact, when we adopted you, it was him who handed over the remaining possessions of your family for you, including this. Son, be very careful with this parcel. Professor Connery told us never to open this parcel, and when you grow up and have questions about your past, we must send you to him with this. Tristan took the parcel in his hands. He didn't know what he was to discover, but he needed to find answers. He boarded his flight the next week, all the way to Los Angeles, California from Austin, Texas. The journey was an exhausting 5 hours flight, after which Tristan arrived in front of Professor Henry Connery's office at exactly 3 p.m. Just as he was about to enter, he saw a man walk out the door and stop, seeing him. Are you Tristan Boyd? Yes, I was here to meet Professor Henry Connery. The man smiled and patted Tristan on the back. I thought I recognized that face. Welcome to California. I am Henry Connery. Your parents didn't inform me you would be here. I would have received you at the airport. Come on in. It was my decision not to trouble you. They wanted to inform you. Well, They could have informed me behind your back. Professor Connery escorted Tristan inside. Sit down, Tristan. So tell me, how are you? I've been quite stressed since I've realized I've been seeing my real family in these strange nightmares. My foster parents have told me they all passed away, while I was the only survivor, and you were the man that found me. But how? How did I survive, and how did you find me? It's a long story, Tristan. Tristan opened his bag and took out the parcel. My mother told me to bring this. Ah, yes. Professor Connery took the parcel in his hands. It all happened 17 years ago. At the time, news reports were being published of families mysteriously being discovered dead. I had been following the occurrences and were quite bewildered about the cases. Professor Connery opened up his drawers and took out a file. These are some of the newspaper cutouts from that time. Tristan furrowed his brows looking at the unusual headlines on each article. Professor, this is very strange. How is this happening? Why? I was also quite suspicious, Tristan, and the cases only began to increase, so I decided to investigate the matter for myself. It was around that time that I met an extraordinary man. His name is Wayne Harris. He's a dear companion of mine even to this day. A very good friend who looks up to me like a student. I had become quite close to him. He often came to my office where we used to do researches on various issues, matters, and events which we would find interesting. Wayne was a brute, but I can't emphasize enough on the fact of how much he desired to seek knowledge. He has many admirable qualities, from his strong moral and profound ethics to his unique physical abilities that no mere human being can have. He was like a younger brother to me. Wayne, you're here. Come on in, sit down. How is everything going? Just as usual, Professor. How are things going with Dr. Hudson? Has he been able to give you an explanation to your condition? Unfortunately, not yet, but he's performed many tests on me. I can tell he's been working hard. Perhaps soon we might reach answers. That's good news, but if you would ask me, I'd tell you your abilities are only a natural part of you. You should embrace it and not be concerned. I don't know, Professor. I'm so different from the others. Sometimes it even feels like I'm restraining myself from hurting others, even with a simple shake of hands. Wayne chuckled. Perhaps I can use the help of a man like you. I'll be traveling out of California on an urgent trip. Where to, Professor? Haven't you read the recent news? Some families mysteriously passed away, all in a similar manner. Every member found dead. The police haven't been able to find any lead on the cases. I decided to go investigate the cases myself. Would you like to accompany me? When I explained all the bizarre incidents that had been occurring, Wayne was more than ready to assist me in my investigation. He is the type of person that always comes forward to serving a good cause, and when he heard of the families who had lost their lives, there was no way to stop him from getting to the end of the mystery with me. Of course I'll help you, Professor. You can depend on me. So Wayne and I headed out to Michigan, where the first incident had taken place. And around that time, I didn't know your family. What I discovered later was that around that time, your father, Edwin Howard, and your mother, Teresa Howard, were living in North Dakota, struggling with your sister's health, who was severely ill. I'd like to have my usual, Edwin. Good afternoon, Collins. The meat pies will take a while. Teresa's not in the kitchen. You don't look like yourself today. How's the family doing? Not well, Collins. My daughter is extremely sick. Her health has only worsened. What are the doctors saying? Their treatment has failed. Not a single medication has worked on my dear Etta. It breaks my heart to see the girl suffer like this. Edwin, a father's heart has to be strong. You're the man of the house. Things will be better soon. Keep patience. Edwin Howard lived with his family in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. He ran a small restaurant in town from which the family sustained themselves. The Howard family were living in peace. They were happy with whatever they had until Etta Howard, Edwin's daughter, fell ill. It had been nearly a month since Etta was sick. Edwin and his wife Teresa had taken her to several doctors, but none of them could help Etta. They all left informing the parents of their inability. Mr. and Mrs. Howard, I know this may be difficult news to accept, but perhaps you might want to stay by her side. Prepare for a peaceful departure. I fear there is not much time left. No, doctor, there has to be some way. Anything. We'll spend all we have. But no, not an end like this. Mr. Howard, try to understand. If you're prepared for what's coming, it will be easier for you and for Etta. Think about her, if not yourselves. No, doctor, please. I'm sorry, there is nothing I can do. We're all helpless here. Edwin, you have to do something. You have to save our daughter. Here is the Bork family. They lived in a quiet part of town in Addison, Michigan. They were the first of those discovered lifeless in a dreadful condition by the police and linked to the strange happenings. When we reached there, we found the property sealed off. However, the police investigation had been long completed. The property had been abandoned afterwards, and we were easily able to access it. We found that the police had evacuated all the belongings, but they had left behind and perhaps overlooked something quite significant to the entire incident. Professor Connery closed his eyes as he touched the floor with his palm. He suddenly held his head, kneeling onto the ground. A trickle of sweat dropped down his forehead. Seeing his condition, Wayne rushed to help him up. "What's wrong, Professor? You don't look all right." "No, it's fine, Wayne. Just feeling a little lightheaded. Don't worry about me. It seems that there are more dire things we should heed first." "What is it, Professor?" "Things do not seem as simple as I supposed. There was a ritual performed here." "A ritual? Is that what I've been sensing?" Wayne suddenly scanned the room. Stooping down to the floor, he rubbed the ground with his fingers. "There's some sort of powder here, Professor. It was used to make some strange designs. This is not just the dust. This is something else." Professor Connery furrowed his brows, looking at the traces of ash Wayne had collected onto his finger. "You're right. This must have been used in the ritual. My eyes would have never caught sight of this. That was amazing, Wayne. I must praise you." Wayne let out a chuckle, ruffling up his hair. "That might be true, but how did you know?" Let's just say it came to me as an intuition." "But Professor, something isn't right." Wayne slowly paced around the room. Nearing the fireplace, he took in a deep breath, scrunching his nose. "I'm getting a very unusual smell. A bad smell. Very strong. I never smelled anything like this from man or beast." Professor Connery placed his hand on the wall. Smoke from the fireplace had blackened the bricks. He suddenly kneeled to his side in agony. Wayne rushed to assist him, worried to see his condition. "Professor, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "Something very evil has happened here." Professor, is the death of my family similar with the strange demises of the other families that you and Wayne were investigating? Actually, what happened with you and your family is far complicated. Once we investigated the Bork family's house, we came to the realization that there was something sinister about whatever was going on. And what about the husband? It says here that he was found floating in the lake. That was indeed where the police had discovered him. They concluded that he had taken his own life by jumping into the water. How the incident took place seemed to be clear. What wasn't was why a person would do such a thing. What could trigger a man to such extremes? So Wayne and I decided to inquire some of the local people about the family. We headed down to the lake where the man was found, where we met some bypassers. The Bork family, their demise was so tragic. The children were so young, a 10-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. The couple had been married for nearly 15 years. I don't know what had gotten into them that they would do such a thing. But one thing was suspicious for sure. Now when I remember it, Mr. Bork had become awfully distant after he discovered his illness, only in the last few days before the tragic incident. Wayne and I were not able to get much information from the locals on the family, but that they were actually quite respected people in the area. After traveling around that afternoon, Wayne and I decided to head on to the next location, Baraboo, Wisconsin. Hurry, Edwin. Her fever is raising again. Here's the prescriptions the doctor gave. Don't worry, Teresa. I'll quickly be back. Even after receiving the devastating news of their daughter's terminal illness, Edwin and Teresa kept hope of a cure. Teresa spent her days tending to Edda's needs, while she herself was weak after giving birth. Taking care of a baby and a sick child was more than a person could handle, and Teresa was drained. Edwin despairingly walked towards the marketplace. He picked up Edda's medication from the pharmacy and planned to go straight back home. However, when he left the shop, he stopped overhearing a man speaking to a few people across the street. It doesn't matter if he is friend or foe. It shouldn't matter if you know him or not. A true helping hand is a helping hand, and we should never hesitate to hold it. Even in hard times, we have to stick by each other. When we see another in need of help, we have to take that step forward without being asked for it. Yes, he's right. We should be more kind to others. Mister, would you please come to our convention? We would benefit from your preaching. Please accept our request. Edwin peered at the pharmacist who was standing by the door of the pharmacy. Who is that man? Him? He's new here. I've been listening to his talks for a couple of days now. I haven't seen another as selfless as him. Doesn't he have a job? He's rich, family inheritance. He helps others in need. Trust me, sir. We don't need any more engineers or doctors. We need people like him to soften our hearts. All I need right now is a way to bring my daughter back to good health. The journey from Michigan to Wisconsin took a few hours, and by the time Wayne and I reached there, it was nearly 10 p.m. Let's go, Professor. The address is only a mile away. Professor Connery was amazed by Wayne's stamina, but it was no surprise. They had been traveling the entire day. But Wayne was still as energetic as he was in the morning. Wayne, how about we find a place to lodge for the night? I'm merely a human being, you know. We'll get there tomorrow morning. Why? Oh, sorry, Professor. I sometimes forget about taking breaks. But you, sir, are not a mere human being. I may not be as wise as you, but my senses are very strong. Yes, I can see that. It's not just your senses, you are very strong. Unlike me, you can go on like this without exhaustion. Wayne chuckled. I'll remember that next time. I hope we find a good place to eat. The two men booked a room at a nearby motel for the night. However, Wayne got upset after looking through the menu. What happened, Wayne? Join me. It's not too bad. Fish, chicken, pasta, eggplant, parmesan. That's all right, Professor. I'm not a veggie fan. Chicken and fish are veggies? Every day I learn so much from you. In my book, fish and chicken are veggies. Red meat is the only real food. Well, to be honest, I'm also not a big fan of veggies, but we have to manage one night. So come on, have some veggies like chicken and fish. Wayne chuckled and reluctantly sat down at the table and ate some chicken legs, wings, and fish sticks. Are you sure they don't serve any kind of real meat here? Not even lamb? No, sir. This is a health-conscious diner. I understand. A man as tough as you needs his protein, but we don't really have a choice. After all, this place is vegetarian. Great, Wayne said, taking another bite of chicken. This is delicious, Professor. Tastes just like mushrooms. After a long night, the two headed out early in the morning to the Wrights family house. The Wright family were that of a couple and their 3 children, aged 7, 10, and 12. Their once busy home was now put on sale after the family's untimely demise. When Professor Connery and Wayne reached there, they found the house unlocked. The windows swaying in the wind. The place seemed to be ransacked by local thieves. Professor Connery walked down the halls and checked each room, but he couldn't pick up on anything odd. He checked out the windows. The neighbor's house was quite far from here. No one could overhear what happened the night from that far. Professor Connery suddenly heard Wayne call out from the kitchen. He went downstairs to find him out in the backyard. What happened? Have you found something? The minute we stepped in here, I got that nasty smell from before, Wayne said, walking towards the woods. That man must have been here. But what's strange is that the further out, the smell is getting stronger. The family was found down in the woods, Professor Connery said as he picked up something from the patio. It was a handmade slingshot. Professor Connery gasped as he stumbled back. He looked at the slingshot in his hands. This belonged to the boy. He hurried towards the woods, shocked himself when he walked up to Wayne, looking down into a big ditch dug out in the ground. I can still smell the blood soaked in the soil. They were all dropped in here. Suddenly, Wayne heard a hissing noise from the bottom of the ditch. He stepped back a bit disgusted to see a snake. We should be careful. There might be more around here. I don't really like snakes. Well, I can't think of anyone who does, but they usually don't attack if left alone. You'll be surprised if I told you how much of a nuisance they can be, but that's a long story. I'll tell you some other day. Look over here. It's that symbol again. Again? What symbol? These people must have performed a ritual similar to the previous family. Very strange. Someone must have erased the designs and symbols after the unholy ritual were performed in both the houses. But the question is, who? The last family member to die, or some outsider? It might very much be the one who is leaving the order. Wayne and Professor Connery started heading back to the house when they suddenly noticed a man standing on the back patio. "Excuse me, are you two here for the appointment?" "Appointment? No, I think you're mistaking us for someone else." "I'm a real estate agent. I'm in charge of selling this house. I was waiting for my customers. And you two men?" "We were investigating the incident that occurred here, with the previous owners, the Wright family." "Oh, yes, that was brutal. The police were unable to reach any conclusion, but everyone around here knows what happened. It sends chills down my spine just thinking about it." "What exactly happened here?" "The wife was mad and in depression. Her husband was sick. She had to take care of her sick husband and her children. But even so, I can't justify what she did. She drugged her husband, took the lives of her children, then dug a ditch to cover up. The whole family was found in a dreadful condition. The police later found her remains in the nearby lake." What kind of mother or wife would do something like this? To their children? This was nothing but cruel and wicked. "Professor, this is very strange, and both events are identical. Indeed, no mother, father, husband, or wife can ever do such a thing. There has to be something more. This is not probable." "How are you feeling, Etta?" "I'm fine, Father. Don't worry about me." "How can I not worry about you, dear? You know how much I love you." "Mother, Father, you haven't slept in days seeing me like this. Now if you two fall sick, then who will care for me? Who will care for little Tristan? Oh, how I wish I could play with my little brother. But that's probably not going to happen." "Don't say that, Etta." "You will, sweetheart. As soon as you get better, you and your brother can go out on adventures together." "Really?" "Really. Now close your eyes and try to rest." After seeing his daughter, Edwin went out to hide his tears. He didn't know what to do anymore. He sat down on a bench down the lonely road, holding his head. What am I going to do? He suddenly felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up to recognize a face he had seen before. It was the man he had seen in town. "My friend, is everything okay?" "No, nothing is okay. My daughter, she's on the verge of death." "Yes, I've heard about you. You're Edwin Howard, right?" "Yes, I am. Can I help you with anything?" "No, my friend, but I thought I can help you. We all need support during hard times like these." "How will you help me? Even the doctors haven't been able to do anything." "Perhaps it's not the body that needs a cure, but the soul. Sometimes we don't just need answers to the problems in this life, but assurance of a life greater than this." "What are you talking about?" "I can help save your daughter." Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos. Tristan Boyd was amazed. He was desperate to know the secrets of his past. As he sat across from Professor Connery, he was trying to figure, but was more bewildered by the strange events that took place around the time of his birth and the demise of his biological family. So, the Wrights had also been involved in these strange, wicked rituals. Deductively, there were many things similar in both the happenings. In fact, both the families were also very similar. Both families were suffering one way or the other. People take the worst decisions when their mind is overwhelmed with stress and grief. Keep this in mind. Always take important decisions on a clear mind. I agree, but what all these families went through was too extreme. How could someone take such drastic steps so easily? This doesn't seem like a decision one could come on their own. Exactly. Great observation, Tristan. This is what was haunting my mind. There was something more to it. There was a pattern in which all these incidents were happening. Professor Connery and Wayne were bewildered by the discoveries they had made. They sat down at a nearby cafe, trying to sort out the information they had gathered. Professor, it seems that these incidents aren't happening to random families from different backgrounds, but there is a pattern. Just look at these two families. They're quite similar, aren't they? Both married couples, innocent young children. Yes, even the family that had been recently discovered in Perham, Minnesota. The family member that was the one to commit the act is later found drowned in the lake. Professor, as you know, I can distinguish the odor of individuals, and I've never made a mistake in my life. The one most distinct factor in both the houses we had been to so far, I picked up on the smell of the same individual. Someone was present in both these happenings. Wayne, take a look at this. The incidents are all happening one after another in neighboring states. First in Michigan, then Wisconsin, and last in Minnesota. Professor Connery said, furrowing his brows. He took out a map from his journal and outlined each of the incidents that had taken place. He suddenly stopped and looked closely at the piece of paper. These people all drowned in Devil's Lake. All these lakes, they have the same name in all the states. You're right. If that's the case, the next incident is to occur in... Wayne took the pen and ran it along the map to the next neighboring state, North Dakota, stopping at the small town known for its Devil's Lake. I can help save your daughter. How? Edwin looked at the man who smiled at him. Take this. It can save the life of your daughter. I'm in a hopeless situation. I'm prepared to try anything. If this does work, I'll owe you for life. No, you won't owe me anything. Just promise me you'll not let your daughter die. Without wasting any time, Professor Connery and Wayne traveled to North Dakota. They reached there that afternoon, walking into a gathering at the town square. There was a fair going on, and numerous folk were huddled into small groups amid stalls and shops. Wayne, look over there. Why are so many people huddled over there? Professor Connery and Wayne walked up to the people asking what the crowd was about. He arrived to town some time back. He's gained much respect and fame since he's been here. People like listening to him. He's helped out a lot of people. Good man, good man. Wayne and Professor Connery looked at each other. Who is he? I don't know, a social worker, a preacher, or just a righteous man trying to do good. His name is Samuel Dawson. Professor Connery and Wayne waited for the crowds to disperse, after which they went up to the man. Hello, I'm Henry Connery, and this is my friend, Wayne Harris. Hello, I'm Samuel Dawson. You must be new here. I haven't seen you two around. Do you have a place to lodge? What can I do for you? Yes, actually we arrived just today. We were traveling through town for some business. Perhaps you could help us. Business? That's really not my forte. I don't believe in business or exchange. I believe in giving, as we all should do for each other as fellow human beings. That's interesting. Perhaps it's my greedy businessman mind that feels these impractical folly words are to content vulnerable, hopeless, desperate low-intellect people. Please excuse my young, naive friend. What does he know? A selfless man like you must have better understanding of life. Well, we all have our beliefs. I find my peace and happiness by doing for people, and someone else may find happiness by gathering wealth and spending it on themselves. I don't blame your young friend, Mr. Harris. Most young men are like this these days. The good old days when people had the heart for doing for others are gone. It's all about money and myself now. I completely agree with you, Mr. Dawson. Will you be kind enough to recommend us a motel? A recommendation from you would really help us. Most certainly. There's a motel not far from here. I'll drive you there. And with my recommendation, they'll pay extra attention to you. No business here, Mr. Harris. I'm not paying them, and they're not paying me. Did you just team up with this man against me? You must have heard of the tragic incidents that have been occurring across the states. Families are being found lifeless. Ah, yes. Very unfortunate, really. You see, I've been traveling through the states myself. You could call me a preacher of love and peace. I try to comfort those in pain and grief. Have there been any incidents in this town? I sincerely hope that there won't be. We need to find a way to prevent things like this from happening. I've been trying to help people with good advice and consolation. We don't find many people like you. What my friend means is that if there were more people like you, these happenings would not have happened at all. If only there were more people like you. Oh no, don't say that. I'm just an ordinary person. I suppose we can meet another time, Mr. Connery. Mr. Harris, I have some urgent work to attend. After speaking to Samuel Dawson, Professor Connery and Wayne headed towards their room to freshen up and relax. And later that day, they went out searching the town for a place to get some food. However, as they entered, Wayne stopped, noticing a woman walking 3 Rottweilers. 3 of them? That's strange. Why? Don't tell me you're scared of dogs. Do we have to take another route? Wayne chuckled. No, animals never disobey me. This is one of the things about me I've noticed over the years. The 2 men continued down the street, trying to choose a restaurant. However, Wayne couldn't help but look at the dogs. Something wasn't right, and sure enough, when they neared the dogs, they suddenly started barking and became aggressive. The women began to panic, tugging onto their leash. Down! Down! Professor Connery turned around to check the streets. What was bothering these dogs? It was just then that the dogs pulled loose from the woman's grip. Wayne made his feet firm, seeing 2 of the dogs pounce onto him. Growling and attempting to bite. Professor Connery was thundered seeing the other dog staring at him. Right before it lifted off its feet to jump onto him. Heel, he yelled, but the dog was rogue, snapping its jaws. With all his might, Wayne threw the 2 rogue dogs off his shoulder. They fell to the ground, whimpering, after which they ran off down the street. Professor Connery shielded himself, just barely feeling the dog's fangs pierce into his flesh, when suddenly the dog backed away, barking loudly. Professor Connery stood up, shocked to see Wayne holding the dog by its mouth. Wayne pushed the fierce animal to the ground, holding down its head. Calm down, boy. I don't want to hurt you. The woman rushed to soothe her dog. How did you do this? I've never seen anyone be able to overpower a Rottweiler without tranquilizing it. How did you hold its jaws? This dog bites with a force of 328 pounds. As Wayne held the dog down, it became more aggressive. After a while, he slowly let it go, and finally, it ran off to nowhere, away from its owner. Professor, are you all right? You're bleeding. I'll be fine, Wayne, but something isn't right. I feel like there's a presence around here. Professor, I know what you mean, but forget everything. We need to get this wrapped up. Let's go inside this restaurant. Perhaps we can get some water and napkins to clean this up. Welcome to the Howard restaurant. Goodness, What has happened to you? Hold on, I'll bring over a first aid kit. Professor Connery and Wayne took a seat near the window while the man rushed over with his kit. Wayne dressed the wound while the man hurried back to attend a few other customers. Professor Connery had noticed there weren't any waiters or receptionists at the restaurant. It was a while before the man was able to return to them. Thank you for your help. Do you work alone here? No problem. And yes, my wife and I run the restaurant. My name is Edwin Howard, but I've been handling things all alone here for some time now. I apologize if it takes a bit long to bring food over. No, that's fine. I couldn't help but notice you look quite anxious. Is everything all right? I have a month-old boy, and my wife is taking care of my daughter, so you can imagine the rush and sleeplessness I'm going through. Well, I don't want to keep you two waiting. What would you like to have? Do you serve steak here? Of course we do. How would you like to have it? Yes, thank you. I'd like to order 3 Pittsburgh rare steaks for myself. No garlic. And Professor, what are you having? I think I'll be good to go with 1 well-done steak with some broccoli on the side. You got it. Food will be served in 20 minutes. As Edwin Howard went off into the kitchen, Professor Connery and Wayne began discussing all that had happened. A few customers were in and out of the restaurant, after which Edwin decided to close early. He was exhausted as was, and the previous night had gone through much stress. When he returned home, he was devastated to find Teresa crying over Etta. Teresa, what happened? Etta, she's been having these sudden seizures. Her body is going cold. Edwin quickly checked Etta's pulse. The poor girl was shaking, breathing rapidly. Edwin quickly ran to the phone, but just when he was about to pick it up, he felt a sudden hesitation. There was no point of calling the doctor. Even if he called the ambulance, would Etta make it by the time they arrived? He needed to do something quick, something right now. Edwin stepped into the room and took out what Samuel had given him. Tristan held his head in astonishment. His whole life he thought he was just an average kid who saw bad dreams. But he could never have imagined that his past would be so haunting and his nightmares could have a deeper meaning. As he wondered how his dreams were related to all these happenings, he looked at Professor Connery, the man who had been through it all, the reason he is alive today. You met my father? Yes, I did. He was a good man. Professor Connery and Wayne headed out that evening in search for Mr. Dawson. There was much they needed to know about this man. Where did he come from? Who was he really? And after speaking to some locals, they were quite auspicious to find out that everyone knew everything about this man's past and where he was living. Everyone precisely knew everything about this man. Mr. Dawson was like a prince. He's the son of a rich man, but he gave up everything for the people. No, Mr. Dawson belonged to a modest family. He made his own riches and then began serving mankind with his wisdom and his wealth. This man has never been stingy. No, he lost someone he loved. That brought a major change in his life. Right. Everyone was so sure about Mr. Dawson's life. Where does he live? Or at least, which part of town? Why are you guys so curious about Mr. Dawson? Are you cops? Far from that. He helped us. We thought it would be easy to find him as he's so popular, so we didn't ask where he lives or his number. We want to thank him before we leave. Oh, I see. He lives at one of his followers' house. No, he's not from here. One of his followers owns a small hotel, more like a motel, and he's a guest there. No, he's staying at his sister's house, the woman with the 3 big dogs. No, that's not his sister. She is his cousin. Wayne raised his brow looking at Professor Connery. Professor, we're lodging at that hotel of his follower. He doesn't live there. Let's check out the lake. The Devil's Lake. Etta, how are you feeling, my child? I'm feeling much better, Father. Haven't felt like this in a very long time. Finally, you're getting better. Now you can play with Tristan. Yeah, play with Tristan and take care of him. Your mother has no time for me. I was about to marry another woman. What? Teresa exclaimed, furrowing her brows. Etta finally let out a laugh. Nothing, sweetheart. Didn't meet any beautiful customer at the restaurant. I will kill you, Edwin, Teresa gritted. Etta sat up in bed chuckling. Mother, stop. Father was just teasing you. Mr. Dawson was returning to his forest house after a long day. Since morning, he had been preaching, helping out people any way he could, some with good advice and some with his wealth. This was the most favorite time of his day, the night when he stayed alone in his peace. No one knew where he lived, so there was no one to bother him. Nighttime was that special to him. However, just as he was about to unlock his door, someone attacked him and held him down. He turned around, shocked to see Wayne staring at him with rage in his eyes. You aren't going anywhere until you give us answers. You might be cunning enough to deceive the townsfolk, but you can't fool us. What are you doing? And what are you talking about? And how did you find my resting place? We found your hideout yesterday. We didn't do anything yesterday because we thought we would take care of your sister and her dogs first, so that no one could interrupt our meeting. Professor Connery and Wayne traveled across town by bus and then walked quite a distance to reach their destination. They arrived near the waterfront sometime around 7 p.m. It had gotten quite dark and the area was secluded. There were not many street lamps out, nor any people. Professor Connery wanted to question some locals, but there was no one, which was a disappointment. But Wayne became very thrilled. Professor, my instincts are telling me he's somewhere here. Just give me 10 minutes and I'll circle the entire lake. No, Wayne, it's not safe. Things are not as they appear. Professor, trust me, nothing will happen to me. You saw me handle those dogs. No, we will check out the area together. You will have to adjust your speed of cheetah to my ordinary human being speed. But Professor, no, do it for me. What if someone attacks me? All right. Professor Connery took out his small but powerful flashlight. Both started to walk. However, Wayne walked back in front of Professor Connery. He didn't have any trouble seeing in the dark. It was after a while that Professor Connery noticed Wayne's face suddenly start to change. You got the odor when you reached here, and it's getting stronger, am I correct? Wayne shook his head with a little worry. Yes. I've never smelled anything like this before in my life. The smell I got from Mr. Dawson was similar and weak, but now it's really strong. Professor, look, a forest house, Wayne said, looking into the trees. I don't see anything. It's there. After 30 minutes' walk, the two men reached a hideout. Both sneaked up to the windows and peered inside. In the dark, Mr. Dawson was burning something for light and performing a strange ritual. How did you do it, Mr. Dawson? How did I do what? I helped you, and you broke into my home, went through my stuff, attacked me? Don't try to avoid Professor's questions on ethical ground. Answer him. What are you doing in this town? How did you make those wonderful families sabotage themselves in such dreadful ways, taking the life of their very loved ones? What nonsense! What are you talking about? Let go of me! Mr. Dawson, you're not the only one with secrets. I knew it was you even before I saw you. Your filthy smell that you left in those families' houses, I smelt you miles away before I saw you in this town. How do you think we found your hideout? Your filthy smell gets filthier when you perform your evil rituals. You want answers? Mr. Dawson said, staring right at Wayne. He suddenly started to chant something. Lord of Darkness, grant me power to destroy your enemies who are coming in the way of your kingdom. Suddenly, his eyes darkened to pitch black and red. Professor, the bad smell is getting stronger. Professor Connery yelled out, Wayne, get away from him! Before Wayne could do anything, Mr. Dawson got hold of him and threw him away. The sudden strength of Mr. Dawson stunned Wayne. Even though Wayne was a man of average height, slightly broader than average man, he had never seen a man stronger or faster than him, no matter how huge or athletic the person was. Wayne was badly injured, hurting his back and ribs, but he knew he couldn't give up now, even if that meant he would not survive. He couldn't let down Professor Connery. He couldn't let Mr. Dawson harm Professor Connery. Mr. Dawson grinned madly. Walking towards Professor Connery, he said, Fools, you cannot do anything to me. I am a worshipper of my Lord, the Dark Lord. He protects me from all harm. I am the establisher of his kingdom, and soon will arise his night, the night of the Dark Lord, and you will all burn and suffer. And in return, I will continue to provide for him sacrifices of innocent families, innocent souls. Wayne ran to get hold of Mr. Dawson by the neck. But Mr. Dawson suddenly caught him by his arm. Wayne was more shocked this time, as he couldn't even move his arm. No one had ever been able to overpower him before. From where did this man get this immense strength that he didn't have a while ago? It was like he was not a man. He had become a demon. You too will kneel to the Dark Lord. Let go of Wayne. Your games are over. Did you not realize what is going to happen now? You're going to become redundant for your Dark Lord. Mr. Dawson laughed out. I'm going to kill your young naive friend, and then I'll kill you as well. You have lost. You can't defeat me. The Dark Lord has blessed me with power. With this I shall make you mortals my slaves, and I shall be the one devoted slave of the Dark Lord. That's what your Dark Lord desires, but once you fail to take my life, your Lord will forsake you. The 3 dogs of your sister had a better chance of killing me than you, Mr. Dawson. Your Lord's wrath awaits for you. Hearing this tremendously enraged Mr. Dawson. Once more, he picked up Wayne and threw him further, and progressed towards Professor Connery for a deadly blow. Wayne was badly injured. In pain, he got up with his last remaining strength to get between Professor and Mr. Dawson. But Professor Connery ushered him to stay aside, assuring him, everything will be all right. By now, Wayne was seeing things blurry. Suddenly, right before Mr. Dawson could touch Professor Connery, a bright flash of light happened. With his extraordinary vision, Wayne could even look directly at the sun, but he couldn't make out much of what happened just now. All of a sudden, the bad smell was almost gone. Mr. Dawson looked at his hands, confused seeing his clothes and his skin slightly burned all over. What is happening to me? He felt a strange pain in his head. He held his nose as drops of blood started to trickle down his face, his knees feeling weak, until he fell onto the ground. Professor Connery stood tall in front of him. With sorrow in his voice, he said, "Your Lord has forsaken you." Mr. Dawson began to cry. "My Lord, please spare me of thy rage. Why? Do not punish me like this. Why have thou forsaken me? My Lord, I call out to thee, your devoted servant. How can you forsake me after all that I have done for thee?" He suddenly felt his chest constricting as he called to his Lord, staring to the skies. Wayne walked close to Mr. Dawson, now almost feeling sorry for the man. "You're still invoking the Dark Lord? What have you done to yourself? What did you gain by doing all this? Harming all those people, deceiving people? What has pretentious goodness and worship of evil given you? Nothing but agony." Professor Connery stooped down to Mr. Dawson. "The Dark Lord has no use of you any longer. He has forsaken you. The promises of the Dark Lord are always false. Samuel, how did you make all these innocent souls take their own lives, the lives of their family, the lives of their loved ones? Perhaps this one good deed will redeem all your sins. Tell us how you did it." Tristan Boyd was tangled between belief and disbelief. Was this man telling the truth? The man who saved him from a dreadful fate and made way for his beautiful life, loving parents, education, and all he had? He owed it to this man. "Professor, what happened to Mr. Dawson after that? Did he reveal how he made all those families suffer? Is Mr. Dawson the reason for my family's dreadful fate?" The answer to your last question is not very simple. Samuel, your end is inevitable, but you can still die in honor. You can die as a changed man. Tell us how you did it. Samuel choked on his last words. "With the book. The book of the dead. It was given to me by the Dark Lord. Ever since my teenage years, I had illicit desires, and knowing that the Lord of Light would never fulfill them, I turned to the Dark Lord. At first, it was simple things that I wanted but would have never got to me. But then began bigger things. Chances, opportunities, and more. Deep down inside, I became dark and more grateful to my Lord. He gave me everything I desired, and powers to make my enemies suffer, enemies who never harmed me, but I was jealous. Soon I realized I had become very beloved of my Lord, and began to pray and beg to him to visit me. And it was one night that a mysterious man came to my house. He knew more about my life than I knew myself. For a moment I thought he was my Dark Lord. But it was as if he could read my mind. He said he was not my Lord, and his name was Richard Blackwood. Richard Blackwood? He's alive? Is he also a worshipper? I don't know. He didn't tell me anything, but that, through me, big events are going to happen. He said he was a prophet, and I'm going to be a key factor for a major prophecy in the future. The battle between good and evil is going to be initiated by me. He advised me not to be good or evil, but wise. Then he left. I don't know if he was on the side of light or darkness, but my life changed after that. My desire to meet my Lord increased, and one night, my Lord visited me and blessed me. He wanted me to expand his kingdom, and he gave me this book. He told me that soon will rise his prince and his knight, who will manifest his kingdom, and I will have to play an essential part. I was given the task to break the prophecy. I was commanded to take the book to good people with family who were suffering, people who were vulnerable at that time in their lives. I became their well-wisher and offered them help. What they didn't know was that I was the reason behind their suffering. I could hex people and make them incurably sick with the Book of the Dead. My lord gave me guidelines to find suitable families for his cause. I became their well-wisher and offered them help. The Borks, the man was dying of illness. He accepted the book for his own life. The Wrights, the woman wanted a cure for her husband. She accepted the book for him. I handed the book to people in their moments of despair, but with it, they didn't achieve anything but that they became possessed by midnight and sacrificed the innocent lives of their families. I then took them to the lake, where they sacrificed the only thing they had left of them, their life in the cause of the Dark Lord. How do we stop and cure the possession? Destroy the book, but nothing can be done after midnight. The performer will die if the ritual is stopped, but their soul can be saved and released from the hold of the Dark Lord only by the family member who survived the unholy ritual. Mr. Dawson stretched forth his trembling weak hand, pointing inside the cabin. There is a small chest. It has a ruby red mirror. Take it. Wayne, who had recovered from his injury over this short time, in a matter of few seconds searched the whole cabin room, stopping at a box. He turned to Mr. Dawson and demanded, "But where is the book?" Edwin Howard," Samuel said before he collapsed onto the floor, lifeless. "I can help you save your daughter." "How?" Edwin looked at the man who smiled at him as he took out a book. "Take this book. It will provide you with not just answers of this life, but a life beyond this one. I would have never given this to you, as it has a dark shadow, but I can relate to you. It helped me to save someone I love. I promised myself that I would never share the knowledge of this book with anyone, but I have seen and felt the love you have for your daughter." Edwin took the book in his hands. "What is this? Some medicine book?" "The book is much more than a medicine book. This book contains the knowledge of defeating death, cure of all sickness. If you abide by it, you will be able to save your daughter. Doctors won't be able to help. You've gone to many, haven't you? It's time you called the Lord and asked for your right. This book has it all. Through it, you can achieve not just everlasting life of your own, but with your entire family. When she reaches the verge of death, there will be no stopping it but this. Pay heed to my words, Edwin. Follow the book." This is a treaty between you and your Lord, the Lord of the underworld. It is only through the Dark Lord that you will ever be able to attain that which you seek of power, honor, and dignity. Only one who is immortal can bless you with such. This is the path through which you will be able to possess power of the dark forces. You will be able to live forever, live under the protection of the Dark Lord, if you do as commanded by him. The Dark Lord answers all prayers, but not every soul is worthy for his blessings. For the Dark Lord seeks a sacrifice of that which you most value. For a simple price of the life of this world, all your worries will be gone, all your weaknesses will be removed. You will live for eternity. Professor Connery sighed as he closed the eyes of Samuel Dawson. Wayne took a cloth from the room and covered the man with it. "Professor, we don't have time. Let's go. It's only a few hours to midnight." Last time, they were here by bus, but today, they came prepared and rented a motorbike. Wayne drove the bike while Professor Connery sat behind him. He drove so fast he was almost flying the bike, but Professor Connery had good faith in him. "Professor, How did you subdue Mr. Dawson? I thought I almost lost you. What was that bright light? Bright light? That's strange. How could you miss out on that with your perfect eyesight? No, Professor, that was no ordinary light. It was so bright, I couldn't look at it. Professor Connery took out his small but powerful flashlight. You know I have a flashlight. He shone it onto the road. I guess this flashlight was a goodbye after all then. It was this flashlight? You're joking, right? Professor Connery chuckled. Look ahead, Wayne. I guess the creatures of dark cannot stand light. The two men got back to town, where they desperately searched for the address of Edwin Howard. His restaurant had been closed, and after questioning the locals, they learned Edwin's daughter was unwell, but was doing better now. That's when Edwin closed his restaurant early to celebrate with his family. Professor Connery clenched his fist, angry at his own mistake. I should have known. Edwin said his wife, who gave birth to his son a month ago, was busy taking care of her daughter. I should have deduced his daughter was sick. Professor, it's not your fault. Edwin was too overwhelmed to even have a conversation. Professor Connery and Wayne hurried back onto the motorbike and reached Edwin's house. However, the house was empty. Professor Connery picked up a pacifier that lay on the ground. They're not far. It was around 1 a.m. when Edwin Howard informed his wife to prepare herself. He picked up his newborn son Tristan in his arms and his daughter Etta in the other. Where are we going, Edwin? Somewhere better, somewhere promising. Why are you taking this? What is this book? Speak to me, Edwin. Don't ask questions, Teresa. Just trust me. Teresa was horrified watching her husband digging the ground. Sweat trickling down his forehead. She covered her shaking daughter with her shawl as she tried to soothe her newborn son. Annoyed and angry at Edwin's passiveness, she exclaimed, "What is this? Why are you doing this?" Teresa, bring the children here. No, you have to tell me. Edwin dropped his shovel and went close to Teresa. He took out something from his pocket and anointed her with black oil. Suddenly, her eyes began to change. Teresa, obedient to her husband's commands, stood by the graves, tears flowing down her cheeks as Edwin took Tristan in his arms and kissed his infant son. Edwin was digging graves. He laid down Etta and Tristan in their graves, while Teresa stood by another. We'll meet each other again, Teresa. This isn't the end. There will come a time when we four will be happy together. No more worries, no more pain. Wayne, don't wait for me. Take the mirror. Show Edwin or his wife, or both of them, their face in the mirror. Hurry. Taking the mirror, Wayne ran towards the woods, getting that bad smell again. He was scared. He could only hear the lone heartbeat of Edwin from this far. Perhaps, if he got closer, he could hear the others. Edwin, no! Don't do this! Stop! You're not at your senses! Edwin dropped the shovel and pointed his gun at Wayne, but before he could do anything, Wayne showed Edwin his face in the red mirror in the light of the lantern. Edwin lost his senses and fell into one of the graves to his end. Wayne kneeled on the ground as his eyes became teary. It was too late. Professor Connery finally arrived, walking fast to the scene. What happened, Wayne? We have failed. We couldn't save the family. Professor Connery began to check the graves. The wife and daughter were the first victims. But I guess it was difficult for the Dark Lord to make a father take his infant son's life, even in the state of possession. What? What do you mean, Professor? Yes, the boy is alive. Wayne exclaimed in happiness. I knew I was hearing something. I thought it was a heartbeat of a bird or a mouse or a squirrel. The two men suddenly heard a cry. Wayne took the child from Professor Connery's hands, brushing off the dirt from his eyes. No matter how strong he may have been, his arms trembled at the sight of this innocent baby who now clutched onto his jacket. Professor, my hands are falling weak. I can't hold on to him. Take him. The baby's heartbeat is getting really slow for some reason. We should hurry and take precaution. Professor Connery took the little boy, Tristan, in his arms, telling Wayne to inform the authorities. I was too late, Tristan. I wasn't able to save them. This is something Wayne and I will regret our whole life. I looked after your custody at the orphanage and searched for a couple that would be able to give you a good brought-up, and then I remembered Mr. and Mrs. Boyd. Professor Connery sighed as he opened the parcel Tristan had brought. Tristan stared at the box that contained the red ruby mirror. This is the reason for your nightmares. In a way, I wanted you to have these nightmares, otherwise you would have had difficulty believing me today. Deep down inside, you know I have said the truth, no matter how skeptic you get about what I said today. I handed this to your parents and told them to safeguard it. Keep it close to you, and when the time is right, I'll tell you all its secrets. I can't believe even things like this happen in this world. Am I going to have nightmares all my life? Everything has a reason, Tristan. Perhaps there is a reason you survived that night. Perhaps your existence is important. You are someone who is very special. And the day you are no longer special, your nightmares will stop. Like I said, time. When the time is right, have faith. Professor, I'm alive. I have a wonderful life. And it's all because of you and Mr. Wayne. How can I meet with Mr. Wayne? Mr. Wayne is also desperate to meet you, but at the same time, reluctant. He has not been able to forgive himself. Like I said, failure of that night left us all with scars, and our only solace of that night was you. Thank you, Professor. Tristan stayed with Professor Connery for a week, touring the city, enjoying the days and bad dreams at night. After bidding farewell to Tristan, Professor Connery returned to his office. He walked up to his bookshelf, taking out the Book of the Dead. He sighed as he returned it back to its place, safe and sound in his custody. Running his hands along the shelf, he took out another book. There will be a day many will try to overthrow the power of the Dark Lord, but none will be successful except for 3 orphan children, souls that shall mature without its guardians. Only they can cause the fall of the Dark Lord. But let this be a reminder to whoever will step foot against the mighty Dark Lord. It may happen so that he will become from his adversary to the night of the Dark Lord. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.